about the uh, the communist viewpoint of Christianity. And now we're going to talk about those sneaky snakes and how they went about getting these ideas directly into our churches. And I think what you're going to find is that there's a lot of parallels between what they did. Now, remember, this was specifically to churches that we'll be talking about in this chapter. Next chapter, we'll talk about schools, and we'll talk about race, and we'll talk about gender and what they did to get a hold of this. And let me remind you again, this was in the 1930s. So history tends to rhyme. It tends to sound exactly the same. They might not do it exactly the same, although in this one, I think you're going to find a lot of parallels about how today looks like yesterday. So let me just get ready to share my screen. Brooke, what are your thoughts just from what you went through before we start?
You know, it's fascinating that I could be so blind to something and not even know it. And I think the not knowing what we don't know is the most dangerous part. And so just going over this chapter 9, I had kind of an awareness, a wake up moment, and that I should have understood and known all along, but didn't realize I didn't. So we can dive into that later, but getting into these books, talking with people, you know, it helps us have the consciousness necessary for us to help craft our civilization, guard our families, because they're under attack, and there's sneaky snakes, like you say. We usually can't see it. So
Right. Well, and that's the thing, is that I don't actually think we should know, because if you don't know history, there's no way that you would see this coming. Now I'll watch influencers and I'll go, oh, they're practicing the outstretched hand. They're literally saying that there's something that they're not, um, to gain influence within our own institutions. So let me just share my screen. You can still see my screen, right? And you can still see me?
yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Okay, so we're going to start just here on Earl Browder. We were talking about him last week. Earl Browder was the head of CPUSA, and he really tried to say publicly that they weren't against Christianity. But what they were saying inside of all of that was that Christianity, it was fine if people joined. Remember that? It was fine if people joined their movement. But if they did, they would fully expect them to reject it, to what we might call today deconstruct. So Browder and CPUSA made an appeal to Catholic working men, and immigrants. Listen, again, this is 1936, you guys. But they made this appeal back then to Catholic working men and immigrants, especially those in union organizations, insisting that the Communist Party heartily agrees with progressive Catholic sentiments. Again, words that we're still using today, and we somehow think they're new. Did you hear that Florida has started to teach people, that they're starting to teach the kids the truth about communism, the history of communism?
Really?
I know. I want
That's
to tell my nephew and just
amazing.
say, what are you learning? I'm going to. So I think it's funny that it's the same words.
Yeah.
Progressive Catholic sentiment. Okay, that stand in solidarity with working people. Remember that solidarity, that fist that we see, within the camp of democracy. Again, at least since 1936, they just took over the truth about our country, a constitutional republic, and changed it to democracy. Every person has a vote. And
Yeah.
again, every person having a vote also means people who do not live here. That's what they were pushing for. We're not born here, who are not citizens.
You know
So,
what's funny is like the changing of the vocabulary is so subtle that it distances people from the real identity, the truth. Like, it's a separation from truth, and it starts with words.
Yes.
And
There's a man who talks about this. He was a media guy all the way back in the 50s, and he said there's a reason we've been using the term democracy, because the more and more we say it, the more people believe it's true, the more it kind of manifests itself to become true. I will share that link when I put this when I take this off of the live and I put it into my regular channel, because then I can put it in the link. But he talks fully about it. You can look it up. It's America, a constitutional republic, not a democracy. Just look for the guy who looks like Twilight Zone guy. So, okay. So, I need to just cancel him. Okay. This claim of shoulder to shoulder aims could not have been a more gross misrepresentation. There have been similar desires for higher employment, more welfare, poverty reduction, and more equitable wealth redistribution, a smaller income gap, and a careful read of the Communist Manifesto or anything by Lenin and Stalin showed no similarities whatsoever to the language of the Old Testament. Why do you think that's true? What do you think is difference between, because it is true, Christians want to help the poor. Christians want a fair and just world. Why is that different?
Well, it goes back to appetites. What do you have an appetite for? And they're feeding on this whole system is built upon an appetite for materialism. They want to be able to live. They want to have enough food, enough clothes, and a house. And can you give it to me? Because that's all I want. I want to survive. And so really materialism is the appetite they're feeding, but their own appetite. And the reason that they will even, target the poor, their own appetite is for power. But it's not a power to control people. It's a power to be the source of truth. And so that was kind of like my wake up, because I don't have that desire. I don't have that appetite. So I'm like, why do they do this? Why do they spend so much time and energy wanting to control the people? And what do they get out of it? What is their reward? But when you delude yourself into thinking that whatever you say, think, or do is the source of truth, then, oh my gosh, what a rush. Everybody has to bow to you. And I think that is the appetite to be powerful, the appetite to be truth. And not in the real sense of the word, but as far as enacting your desires and your dictates and everything. And I think that's the difference between Christians who want to discover truth as gods and the communists who want to be truth, who want to be law. I think that's their appetite.
It's interesting that you said as gods, and I find it goes all the way back. Something that I was listening to earlier this week from Dad Saves America was that it's about coveting, right? So,
Yes.
and it's so funny that all of these biblical ideas are rejected. I will have people who are like, "Don't listen to her; she's a Christian." Okay, but these ideas are as old as time, and so is coveting. Coveting is really the first, kind of the original sin, whether you're thinking of Eve or whether you're thinking of Cain and Abel. Both times, coveting. Both times, I want to be as God, which is what Marx was too, right? Marx had this, I want to trample the world as God. And he had so much rage because he couldn't be God. But yes, I hadn't actually thought about the idea of appetites, because I'm like, what in the world would attract people to what I see as misery?
Yes. That's the biggest disconnect for me. And that's why it's so hard to believe. And the people who are duped into thinking that this is the predecessor to utopia, right? This is where
Right.
we're all going to share everything. They don't understand that appetite and desire either. And in order to understand how evil this is, how dark it is, you have to understand the appetite that drives it. And it's not the benevolence they claim to have.
No.
It's not materialism. It is power. It is being the source of truth.
And I feel like that is something, again, that is so obvious. This week, again, just watching social media, I saw a drag show of people mocking the death of Charlie Kirk. And these are the same people who are constantly saying kindness and dignity are the most important thing, that we need to make the rules because we don't live in the world that we want to see. So there must be rules to push that world. Again, these are Marxist talking points that I don't even believe the people who are saying them know, because again, we are not taught what's in this book.
Yeah, they can't see it because they haven't been taught to see it, and that's part of it. And they like, hey, we don't want to. When I went to the librarian, and I'm like, which population are you going to serve? Because you can't serve both. You can't protect the pervs who want the explicit content, and at the same time as protecting the kids who don't and the families who
Right.
don't.
Well,
So
and that's
which
the thing. They've made their choice. That's the reality, and it's a hard thing to understand. But they've made their choice. Just like when people say, when our friends went to the Capitol and said teach communism, and a bunch of people said no, we're not going to. Today's not right now is not the right time. Different people have different views on communism. I'm like, well, then teach both. Teach that these are
yes,
why people want it, these are
yes,
why people don't. But
yes,
if you're going to teach it, then
yes,
you need to show the atrocities of what's happened because of it.
yes. Isn't that funny that their excuses cannot even hold water? It's filled with holes,
Right.
and yet they continue to believe them. And that's why the appetite at the bottom of this is to be the source of truth. Which means you utterly deny truth, which means you can hold two opposing things at the same time and say they're both true, and you lose all credibility to anyone who desires to think. And so,
Yes.
you know,
But
it's
that's the thing, is that our we are not encouraged to think. We are so encouraged to feel. Oh, it's going to be
um,
so great when I have the same size house as my neighbor across the street, who's put everything into, who sacrifices, who doesn't go on vacations, who works well more than 40 hours a week. All of these things to build, 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 because that's what's important to them. But
mm.
yet you're so convinced that it needs to be equal, that you should have the same when your desires are not the same.
And it's funny, it's that's what our society, and there's good in it too, to learn how to manage your money. So I've been buying games to play with my kids to teach them.
Uh-huh.
And so we recently bought the game Cash Flow, which is by Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it
Okay.
has, and you're caught in the rat race. It's like
Yeah.
until your passive income overcomes your expensive, you are in the rat race. And I was like looking at it thinking, but the rat race, that's where all the magic happens. It's where you raise your children. It's where you help your neighbor. It's where, and I'm like, we need a different board game that reframes it, because this is really our thinking, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's the thinking we're brought up with. And we need to, and that's Christianity, but to have something and,
Yeah.
reinforce it, because we tend to swallow as we're swimming in this ocean as fish. We don't even know that we're in the middle of water, and we swallow it all the time.
The
And we
amount
have to,
of young people who are supporting socialism because they hear something, especially through Instagram or whatever, they hear something like, well, it should all be fair, right? And they have no idea. They honestly, the people that I'm talking about are kids who would say socialism sucks, but also there shouldn't be, people shouldn't be allowed to be billionaires. and they don't
Yeah.
have, and they only know what's thrown at them. One of the things that I noticed in this, and we'll get to that, is the fake civics. The let me
Action
let
civics.
no, well, even that, but what I'm talking about are the influencers who get up and tell you they're pushing Marxism and call themselves like civic sage, right? People who are, I mean, quite frankly, here it's MWEG women.
Yeah.
And they'll say one thing, and they'll say my favorite one that I saw recently was Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan totally supported immigration. We need to be more like Ronald Reagan. Right. Where did he support it? He supported immigration of
Legal.
people, well, not only legal, but he supported the immigration of people who were anti-communist. He supported people leaving Soviet systems. That's what he
Yes.
supported. And when,
Yeah.
and that is not what's presented, right?
Well,
Because
yeah, they only show the convenient truth. They don't show
yes,
all the facts. They don't teach it, and
yes,
that's why, like,
it's been that. So I don't believe we can call it teaching anymore. I don't
uh,
call it teaching anymore. Just like I don't call public schools, I call them government schools, and they're pushing towards a DSA. That's which is Democratic Socialists of America. I want to get back to, because there's a lot in this chapter, and we try to keep it at exactly that 1 hour mark. So, the fact that certain passages of the Old and New Testaments or certain religious orders express forms of communalism or sharing or helping the poor or even pooling together of common resources does not, ipso facto, mean that those ancient or medieval elements that were practicing 19th century ideology that would become known as communism. In these cases, the Acts from the Apostles to the Franciscans, also societies or orders, were first and foremost forged by a Christian model. It was a religion that served as their anchor, their rudder, their guiding, inspiring, motivating, animating higher force, their very spiritual force that communism ridicules regularly, by the way, rejects, and seeks to abolish. Reading any writing by Marx or Engels or Lenin and contrast it with any writing by or about, say, Jesus Christ or the Apostle Paul, one will immediately notice that they are completely different in every meaningful respect, irrespective of whether they share a specific commonality, such as sharing the resources or giving up property. They are doing it by choice. That is,
exact.
go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's the enemy. It's the enemy of freedom, family, love, truth. I mean, just the enemy of truth. Like, I try to help my kids understand truth because, like, what is truth? Nobody knows. And to boil it down to say, truth means if someone says they're going to pay you 15 an hour after 5 hours of work, okay, great. Now they give you $75, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's truth. Someone does what they say they're going to do. It is what it is. And people like, oh, well, we can't define truth for other people. Like, that's what we believe. And this is the annihilation of truth.
Perfect words. Yes, perfect. I would also call it the dismantling. Again, that is the word that Christians need to hear, because as Christians are pushed into this sense of moral relativism,
Mhm.
they begin to believe that
Unwittingly,
they're
unwittingly. They don't know that they are. That's the
right.
scariest thing.
Well, to just today, in Utah, I don't know if you're seeing it in your neighborhoods, but in my neighborhoods, I'm seeing a lot of pushing for witchcraft. Come to the park for a witchcraft circle. Come, a healing circle, but here's a crystal ball in the center of it. Um, community community groups that is their focus. Witchcraft, feminism with spirituality, witchcraft, like all of these different things, and people don't know. They think, oh, I'm going through a really hard time, I need a circle of women who are going to support me. And that's what they think. And the thing is that people, again, just like in this, they will intentionally tell them, we love all religions, everyone is welcome here. And It's no different than what's in this book, because what you'll find is they'll say, well, we love all religions, everyone is welcome here, we need to join with our outstretched hand to welcome everyone in. But the goal is absolutely, as they learn, as they progress, that they will get rid of what they would call foolish things.
Well, the outstretched hand, I mean, if we're doing some visualization, is also the outstretched fish that's going to squash you. Like it
Yeah.
becomes, hey, come here. And then bam, they squash all of your beliefs and your
Yes.
freedom and
and
everything.
and they don't know that to begin with. That's why one of the groups that has so quickly left are Christian musicians. They get caught up in one thing. Oh, I support Black Lives Matter because everybody matters, and that's how they hear it. And remember, people used to say no, all lives matter, and they'd say, oh, just because we're telling you that Black Lives Matter, it doesn't mean we don't believe all lives matter. And now we're at a point where it's totally acceptable to hate the white race. That's what I'm seeing, and it's horrifying. But when you know history, you aren't surprised by it. And when
Yeah,
you're learning history, you are surprised.
well, it's funny because it's accepted in so many communities that's true. You don't see the danger of it, and that's true in
Yes.
history too. Like slavery, they're like, oh, everybody does it, it's okay, and now we have this. So people need to learn to develop their conscience in relation to the Bible, and or it a higher power other than themselves is what I'm saying.
Right.
Because if we just rely on ourselves to be the source of truth, we have been all of this garbage has been normalized, and we think that it's okay because that's what we have experienced. So we can't trust our own view, because if we see it happen so often around us, we're like, oh, that's fine, they were fine after they got up and went away, and she still has a job, and even though she got turned down for this other job because she was white, that she still has a job and everything is fine. I've seen it in my life, it causes no damage. And you know we aren't omniscient. We can't see it. We have to hear those
Right.
stories. We have to tell each other those stories,
Right.
history, and from things, instead of the glossed over history that they're saying, like about Reagan. And so we think this is something that supports our worldview, when in fact all of the relevant details would have changed the story to be the complete opposite.
So let me keep going with specifically what the Bible says about this, because again, I want to get into broader, and especially Sheen. I think what he says is just amazing. So, moreover, the Bible repeatedly offers vigorous defenses of private property and property rights. As rudimentary as the understanding implicit in the Ten Commandments laid down by the Creator, thou shalt not steal. To steal is to take someone's property, which is sacred and a natural right according to both biblical law and natural law. The assertion of Marx and Engels that the entire communist program may be summed by the single sentence, abolition of private property.
That's the
So
exact opposite.
so you get all of these people who are like, I just want to have enough. And you need to remember that when you are taught from a lens of grievance, enough is never a thing. You never get to the point of enough. And I know this as somebody who's in the process of moving and purging and getting rid of a bunch of things, and being at a certain point in life where I'm just like, I only want my enough. And I have a pretty clear idea of what that is. And I don't care what the next person has. But that is not the Marxist viewpoint. The Marxist viewpoint looks at the person next to them and says, oh, they have two pots and I only have one. Let's kick them out of their homes, make their children, and I'm literally quoting history here, make
Yeah.
their children beg and eat garbage and kill their fathers. That's the truth of what a covetous, low trust society
Low
Right.
trust. Oh, I love that you said low trust because I was always like, how come Mexico can't thrive? I'd go down when we were younger and I was trying to figure out how come they couldn't just use the same system. But there
Yeah.
isn't the trust there for it to flourish because, you'd have to bribe the police and they would take it. And, there's just in a low trust society, your economy withers. And that's just people don't want to give out their best. Um,
Right.
and that's what this is fostering, low to no trust in your government system because they're going to take it. You're afraid, you don't want to tell your neighbors. So in that type of environment, you cannot thrive. And when
Right.
you don't know who's going to take something away from you, if you say, hey, if I have this is going to be mine, the trust goes up and you will begin to give it your best.
Well,
Like,
and you can't have high trust in a totalitarian, because that totalitarian means everyone might, it's not just a matter of saying and doing, it's a matter of believing. And when a person doesn't believe, when a person says one thing out of line, another person will report on them. Again, this is stuff that has happened over and over again, always in communism. And people will say, well, real communism hasn't been tried, and it won't be. All you have to do is look at what people are saying on social media. Look at the hatred when you don't agree with someone that gets spewed at you, and that
that's the
is
whole
what
point.
happens.
That's
Yeah.
the point is hatred. And
Yes.
it's like, and we talked about that last time, the enemies. And you're my enemy. And it's like, no, they believe differently, but they would still save me if I was drowning. Like I know my neighbor who believes differently than me. We were playing
Right.
cards the other night. And she's like, we don't believe it all the same on blah, blah, blah. And I just looked at her like, I was like, yeah, we could have that conversation. But what use would it be? Let's keep playing cards. Like, like
Right.
you believe something differently from me. So what? We still essentially believe that, we can be friends. And
But that's very different than where this mentality gets to.
exactly,
Right.
exactly.
We've seen in the work that we do, we've seen work to intentionally other. And when you intentionally other,
Yes.
you ostracize. And when you ostracize people, when you say that when you convince society that there are people not worth saving, when you convince society that he was a good man, or he didn't deserve to die, but he said a lot of terrible things, you've you've ostracized, you've othered someone.
Yep.
And when it continues on after that person has died for over a year, and it still continues with drag shows mocking that, I think it's pretty clear that there are people who don't believe other people deserve to exist. And what's crazy is it's continuously projection, because that other side will use words like genocide when that's kind of what they fantasize about. And we need to not fool ourselves that necessarily the person that's playing cards with us today would save us. Maybe that one would, but some wouldn't. And that's just the reality of what you have to know when you study history. That
Well, you just have to look at Charlie Kirk. Will they have the memorial? They canceled the other one. Will they have this one that they say they're going to have?
I think that they will, only because of the pressure. But I don't but I think it is a great risk to attend it. You can attend it if you want to, but I think it is a great risk. And yeah. Okay, so this was interesting to me because he says, like I told you, right here in my own hometown, or in my town here, that there's park events for witches and warlocks. And he says on page 202, it would be like witches and warlocks trying to reach out to Catholics and Christians, because each side, after all, has a spiritual element. This is why I say it repeats. So in
Yeah.
the 1930s, they were trying to argue that Catholics or Christians generally should just join hands with the communists, the people who hate them and hate their religion and want to kill their God.
Yeah. Well, and want to kill them.
Yeah,
It's like, hey,
yeah,
come in. The water's fine.
Yep.
to the boiling frog. But yeah.
Yes. So it would be like Satanist assuring Catholics and Christians that they too have a master. And even more relevant to this discussion here in this chapter, it would be like fascists in the 1930s reaching out to Catholics and Christians because, after all, they loved their country just as Franco and Mussolini and even Hitler loved theirs. I
Isn't
again,
that funny? And
yeah,
it's a different type of love. It calls for the definition of this word love, right?
right.
I would say that Hitler's love of his country was a pride in it wasn't a benevolent, self-sacrificing love. It was a
Oh,
dictatorial, controlling love that and so we really can't use the same word. And
no, no, and here's the thing: fascism requires force. So it's funny to me that the communists all the way back in the 1930s were using terms like fascism. Oh, you don't want to be a fascist, be one of us. Both are totalitarian.
both are tyrants, and they're on the same line. They're near each other. Like, I don't even understand what the difference is. There is no difference. They both require force. They both deny individual rights, and there is no difference between fascism and communism. Okay, prove me wrong.
No, there a difference between fascism and communism. No, no, I mean, I think the ultimate thing and the thing that I'm fully against is totalitarianism. This is why when even Christians, of which I am, say we need to take over and everyone needs to follow our rules. Look, I think it's a far more peaceful way than people who think and read, and it's much better to look at somebody as your brother or sister than it is to look at someone as a dog or a pig. That's the fact. And I'm
Wait, did you
sorry to
just
be
say
blunt.
it's easier? What did you just
I
say?
said it's much better to look at someone as your
Oh,
brother or sister, even your brother or sister that you might be estranged from. It is
yeah.
better than to see them as a dog or a pig or an infidel.
Well, see,
Much better. So,
better defines on a common definition of what is good. And when your appetite for good is so completely different, you can't communicate with them anymore. And so you have to frame it in a way that they understand. And so to just say it is better to consider them as a brother or sister than a dog or cat, you could say our society fosters the necessary trust for our economic system to develop when we believe our fellow human beings to be brothers and sisters rather than dogs and cats. Otherwise,
well, dogs and
you have
pigs. It's
dogs and
specific.
pigs. Oh,
Uh-huh.
sorry.
It's okay. It's very specific. I am talking about the Islamic. I'm talking, yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
that's what I'm
Okay.
talking about. Like there is a, if you are not one of us, this is what you are. And you should be treated accordingly. And then you have to think about the way that people, it's very interesting to me to watch these totalitarian things that supposedly should be so opposed from each other. That today's modern college socialist thinks they just want a world that's full of moral relativism where anything goes. They basically want to live out the musical Hair
Oh, I
without getting
haven't seen it, but I don't really want to, I don't think.
without getting sent to Vietnam. Basically, they just want the crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, but
But see, we have to.
totalitarian religions do not want the crazy. They will not allow the crazy. So how in the world they come together is a lie. And that's important to
Yeah.
understand. I want to go into this Browder because he comes out and he says it is not of our choosing at all, and which in so and far as it exists is founded on misunderstanding and misinformation. Again, holy cow, words that we've heard in the last 10 years and thought they were new.
Well, they have to understand the opposites in this, and they don't, and that's why they think it's the opposite of. They think on one side is fascism, one side is communism, but on one side is anarchy, and
Yes.
one side is totalitarianism. And in order for that, and people rock back and forth because in anarchy they're like, "Save us, anybody save us," and it goes right back to
Yeah,
totalitarianism,
I was gonna
and
say, I
that's the
feel like
course of history. And in order for both of those to go, the people have to have individual rights. Otherwise, you'll rock back and forth between anarchy and totalitarianism. And so, and there has to be choice or there will be totalitarianism again.
yes,
And so, people fundamentally don't understand that. Even in my class where I teach that, they're
yes,
like, and on the right is fascism. I'm like, nope,
right.
that's over here with the tyrants.
So what I always say is that it's more of a circle than it is a line.
Hmm.
Extreme, if you're extreme on either side, you're basically touching the same things. Um, so I do understand. I have read this 7,000 or the yeah, 7,000
5,000.
the 5,000 year leap, yes. And so I do understand that concept, but I see it as this because you'll follow it in the DSA. They'll say things like, our goal is to make people as miserable as possible so that they will accept what we want. Nothing will stop. The chaos will not stop until we get what we want. So it's one is just a useful tool. Anarchy is a useful tool. This is why I always say stop using children as pawns. Stop using these different groups as pawns. When people come to me and they say, my child is going through this, my child is going through that, I say, first off, tell them that you love them. Secondly, tell them, don't let yourself be used as a pawn. That's it.
Wait, did you say that that's what you should tell kids?
So this is what I tell kids. If they're in the heart of, say, we have a huge gender confusion thing going on, and parents will call me and say, what do I say? And I have my own personal beliefs, but when it comes to protecting your child, I say the very first thing they need to know is that they could be used as a pawn. The first thing they need to know is that you love them, period. I love you. I love you. You will always be mine. I either brought you into this world or I raised you or whatever it is. But that second thing is do not let a movement use you as a pawn. And then,
Okay. You have to say that full sentence because I don't think kids would understand it.
no, absolutely. So I don't just say it. I explain it to them. I'm like sending people clips historically, like Julie Bailing's Beneath Sheep's Clothing. I'm showing them this is how they will use you as a pawn. You can be attracted to whomever you want to be. And again, I have my own beliefs on this. But in terms of if your child's in that spot, the first thing you have to teach them is don't let someone use you.
No,
Same
no,
thing with race.
I think it would be easier to teach them to say, don't let them persuade you that truth doesn't exist. I mean, the biggest truth kids can see is they just check their shorts and say, I'm male or female. They
There's
can't do a
that.
blood test, but they are being used as a pawn. But to understand how it filters in by having them say, hey, the government is now the source of truth. Truth does not exist
Oh, I
independently of the
totally agree with
government.
that, but that's part of it. But I'm talking about as simple as when you go to X club and they teach
Oh,
you that
yeah,
because you have
yeah,
these
yeah.
feelings, whether
Yes.
that is
Yeah.
race or gender, when they teach you that because you have these feelings, you must pick up your sword, they're using you.
Yes. When they tell you to pick up your sword, that is so true.
And
Um,
and
and
and that's the
feelings
same
are
thing that they were
truth.
doing here. They were doing the same thing here. Oh, well, we aligned here, so you need to fight our cause. So they say, we want to be clear, we want to clear away all misunderstanding and refute all misinterpretation in the interest of brotherly social relationships. They're liars, lying, sneaky snakes. Okay.
Yes, and you know what's funny is if they were just teaching the Bible, they would overcome all of these things that they pretend is truth, such as you need to affirm someone's feelings. And it's like, no, truth must come first in order for us to support each other adequately, because I need you to help me see when I falter, and you can help me see, but truth must be what sustains us. And they're like, first get rid of truth, your feelings are true. And if we were to help people identify um, the source of feelings, if they understood where feelings come from a psychological perspective, instead of like, oh, I felt it,
Yes.
it's true. It's
Yes.
like your feelings come because of the story that you have told yourself behind it that may or may not be true.
Yes. Yes. That's very true. And now I do, when I teach, I do always explain to the students that there is a difference between theory and fact. Some things we know for sure. And I'll
Mhm.
walk them outside and I'll say, look up at the sky. Is it raining? And if it's raining, they'll say yes. And if it's not, they won't. And I'll say, that's truth. That
Yeah.
is something that can't really be argued. Now, could somebody say, well, it's raining, it's not raining there, but it's raining over here? Sure. But it's only true if it's actually raining, if there's actually drops coming down, right? There has to be some sort of fact in what they're saying. And this is the reason that I say lying liars and sneaky snakes is because they fully knew. They knew that they hated the idea of religion, that they thought religion was foolish, that they mocked religion behind closed doors. But at the same time, they wrote these things. It's kind of like an organization calling themselves, taking a church's name upon them, using that name to say, oh, we believe these things when they know full well they don't. Saying
Yeah.
that they're nonpartisan when they absolutely aren't.
Yeah, they have free license to lie because they are the source of truth. And that's the
Yes.
difference. And they want everybody else to let them be the source of truth.
Yes.
And that I think that underlies everything. Where is your source of truth? Is the human, is the government, is Karl Marx, is Hitler, or is it God? Like you can't have both.
Right. Okay, I'm going to move into I because I love this and I would highly recommend that anybody looks up Fulton Sheen. He was amazing. So Earl Browder
Page.
sends out this thing. I'm on page 204.
Oh gosh, I want to get to page 228.
I don't think we're going to. There's no way. Unless you want to go extended, which I can.
No, no, I have to go. So,
Okay. Okay. So it says, we extended the hand of brotherly cooperation to the great mass of the Democratic Catholics, Browder continued. So this is where he starts. Now you have this person. First, you've got the Qui Pluribus, which I believe we talked about in the very first one. That was the very, very first Pope Pius in 1846. Communism, said Pius, was a dark design of men in the clothing of sheep while inwardly ravening wolves. Wolves. After taking their captives gently and mildly bind them, they then kill them in secret. If
yes,
you don't know the story of
yes,
communism, and
yes.
I,
That's
I,
it.
I will go as fast as I can to try to get there, but if you don't know the story of communism in other countries, I encourage you to look up the names that were hidden from us. Names like Pol Pot, names like Mao Zedong. Look up Stalin. Look up what they did, especially to churches. You can just go type in Russian church propaganda, and you can see the absolute hatred that communists had for the religious.
I went to Moscow in I don't remember, maybe it was 2002 or 2001. And they still had Lenin in his glass case, and he was all yellow, and they'd bring him up for everybody to see, and then they'd bring him down. It was his dead body that they would bring up for people to see. And it's fascinating to me that they still revere and reverence him, knowing that he was one of these
who killed in secret with deceit and cunning and deception so gross that decades after his death, he is still being revered.
Let's think about some of the things that are current today in terms of they've taken this attack on families, especially the homeschool community. Okay, the reason why is because homeschoolers are saying no. It's sort of
Yeah.
that thing where they put up that umbrella and they say, this is what we're going to teach our children because this is what we believe is true. Now, if you really believed in your true moral relativism, then you would have no problem with people
Ah.
thinking different than you. But
Yes. Yes.
they have a massive issue. No one is allowed to think
Mhm.
differently.
Yes.
And so the best way to fight back, and I'm just doing it this way because I want to make sure that we're tied up. Um, which means this is going to take much longer than I thought to finish this book, but that's okay. Okay. Um, the only way to fight this is to know their sources. So I don't recommend going and watching, like, I don't get my news from Fox News. I don't get my news from some diluted place. I want to know what they're saying. So I watch people sometimes a little hard to listen to, like Dr. Karlin Borisenko, because she's going in and infiltrating them and looking at their sources. There's a book called, and I did it again. Um, I did it again. The one, oh gosh. Anyways, there is a book about, it's dedicated to Satan. You know the book I'm talking about? Rules for
No.
Radicals. Rules for Radicals Defeated. In that book, what's great is that it's chapter after chapter. In fact, I think it'll be the next book club book. But it's chapter, it'll say exactly, taking their sources. This is what they think. And this is what Fulton Sheen did. He said, let us stick to the facts. Thanks for the invitation, but we Catholics and all Americans must decline the invitation of the United Front. And why? Simply because it's a front, otherwise known as a lie or a cover. A front is a camouflage and deceit to be removed when it has served its purpose. So you have this front. Oh, we're all together. Let's all come together. Let's join hands in this purpose of unity. That's that front. They did it in South Africa.
Well, the best way to unite a people and to bring them in is to exclude someone else. And so
Yes.
that's how they're
United
unifying
against
people.
something. Yes.
Yes. And so that's their method of unification is exclusion of Christians, exclusion of people who believe that is for a married man and woman, and
Yeah.
calling them names and bigots and everything. And so and that's what I mean, even the middle school girls know that. They know that if they exclude someone for no reason whatsoever, they as a group will be more united. Like
Yes.
they
Yes.
understand it at a primal level, like it works. So, in
Yeah.
order for them to be unified, they have to exclude. So, the fact that they're about inclusion, the subnote right there is that we're about including people because we've excluded these people. And
Yes.
that is how we unify.
And that is 100% what's happening in our schools.
Yes.
That is 100% what this cancer called social and emotional learning is.
Yes. Yes.
So, and it's, again, it's just history repeating itself. They do it with a kind way. They do it with cute little cartoons. We're only going to spend 5 minutes teaching your children how to be kind to everyone who agrees with us.
Yeah.
So, communism has two faces. One, it shows in Russia where it is established. The other, it shows the rest of the world where it hopes to be established. So, two different things. And when he's talking about Russia, let me be super clear. And they took away their children and put them in orphanages and they killed the parents. Or they took nuns and forced them to be prostitutes. They did anything they could to crush their minds and to dull them. And when you take a kid and make them a ward of the state, you make them dependent. And this is what they did. They wanted utter dependence. So it hopes, so in Russia where it is established, that's what he's talking about. And to the rest of the world where they put a bunch of flowers and rainbows out and where they want it to be established. This is where they sing Holy cow. Liam and I were listening to we were watching a movie called A Complete Unknown. And all of these songs that we used to sing and that I love, songs like This Land Is Your Land, This Land Is My Land, like these folk singers, many of them were members of the Communist Party. And we're not supposed to know or talk about that, right? We're just supposed to judge that questioning their motives
What?
is,
This land is your land. This land is my land. It's
yeah,
communist. No, no,
I,
no. I want to retake that song and
I
say,
know.
no, I want to own it and just say, because I choose to welcome you in if you follow the laws. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Just have a sub note on the song so I can sing that because I like that song.
I love that song. So it was so shocking to find that out. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, really? No, no. And so I go into Grok and I'm like, oh, okay. So, all right. You wanted to go to, let me
Yay!
see, 228. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's where they have the oh, now where did it go?
I don't know. But if we're going into the next chapter, I'm going to be so mad at you. Nope. Okay. Obliterating all religion. That's
Yeah.
chapter 9. So we were only in chapter 8 all of that time. Okay, so chapter 9, obliterating all religion. You guys,
Well, it's the
that
10
should be enough.
Commandments.
That should be enough. Louis Boudin's, yes. Okay.
Well,
The
and
war. I'm going. Where?
on 228, it's the 10 Commandments as printed verbatim in the Congressional Record.
Okay. Just talk about it while I'm looking for that part.
Okay. Number 1, never forget that the clergy is the most powerful enemy of the communist state. This tells you exactly who they are. Number 2, try to win your friends over to communism. Number 3, convince your friends
I
not to
got
have
it.
any.
Sorry, right
Okay.
here.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, I'll do it, I guess. So try to win your friends over to communism and remember that Stalin, who has given a new constitution to the Russian people, is the leader of the anti-God army.
Yes, it's right there. You can't believe in socialism and communism and believe in the Bible. It's their exact opposites.
So let's repeat that again because I was looking for it and it might look a little bit crumply on the page. So let's look at this again. Here are the 10 commandments as printed verbatim for the Congressional Record. This is the 10 commandments of
Communism.
Okay. So never forget that the clergy is the most powerful enemy of the communist state. Try to win your friends over to communism and remember that Stalin, who was given a new constitution, remember that when you've got a DSA that says that the Constitution is toilet paper, that they wipe their butts on the Constitution, Hassan Piker, is the leader of the anti-God army, not only the USSR, but throughout the world.
Yes.
Number 3, convince your friends not to have any contact with priests, or you might say pastors, or you might even say just Christians. 4, watch out for spies and report saboteurs to the police. Does that sound welcoming? Does that sound safe to you? Safe and welcoming? Watch out for spies and report saboteurs to the police.
Well, it's the exclusion. It's the exclusion that is the root of the inclusion, in quotes, which isn't even inclusion. It's the exclusion that feeds this so-called inclusion.
Right. Make sure that atheist publications are distributed among the largest number of people. I want to hit that because in the little free libraries, a lot of these young, very devout socialists are putting in papers for our kids. They're like, oh, look, this one has a bookmark and it teaches you about digital media literacy. All teaching you that there's only one correct view. That's the whole point in a nutshell. A good young communist must also be a militant atheist. You get it? This is what I was talking about in terms of when your kids are questioning things. You could say a good young activist. So must be a militant atheist, a good young member of the queer community, a good young Black, Hispanic, Asian female must be a member of a militant atheist community. He must know how to use his weapons. Well, we teach that in social and emotional learning. Well, we don't, but they teach in social and emotional learning that kids should be able to choose their disruptive strategy by the age of 8th grade. This is a standard. So, a
Where?
good young communist, it was in the second steps curriculum. So a good young communist must also be a militant atheist. He must know how to use his weapons and be experienced in the art of war. Yeah. Wherever you can, you must fight religious elements and prevent whatever influence they might have on your comrades. So think about when you want to post something in social media, maybe combating the witchy stuff on a group page. And immediately there are people saying, they can't post that. That's religious. They can't post that. That's political. They're doing the exact same things.
Well, and
Go ahead.
we do it to ourselves. I mean, that's what, like, when I've been in groups who work for parental rights and stuff, it was like, well, we want to appeal to all, parents, and we're
Right.
not religious. And I was like, wait a second, how can we even identify truth if we don't believe in a God? And so that's why I wanted to be with Utah Moms for America, is because it's not religious, but they do believe in a God, and that you have to identify a source of truth. And if you don't identify a source of truth, then your truth source, even not identifying it, you have no basis or foundation for your organization if you have not identified where you
Well,
get your
I think
truth
what we
from.
need to recognize, because I don't want people to not listen because they consider themselves agnostic or questioning or whatever else. Okay. So here's what I think we need to recognize is that everyone believes in God. It just depends on what your God is. These
Wait,
people,
you just said agnostic and atheist. That doesn't make sense. That
okay,
their definition is they don't
no,
believe or that they
atheism
question.
is their God. The state is their God. Power, materialism is their God, is what I mean. I'm talking about God lowercase g, but to them it's God capital G. And you have to understand that. Not everybody's looking at a Christian worldview, but even if you aren't looking at a Christian worldview, you should realize that killing parents and institutionalizing kids is a raw deal. Most people with any decency recognize that. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have such decency today. So that's what I think is important to get across, is that there is this human connection, or at least there should be. The whole issue, my biggest issue, is that communism allows and celebrates the dehumanizing of the other. We don't do that. People will say, oh, Christians are the most hateful. I can say, no, I don't want anything to do with your lifestyle, without wanting you dead, or to crush you, or to say that you can't have a job, or to say that you're a bad human being.
And
That
that's funny. That's what they say we want. And we're like,
I
you
know.
just put those
But
words
we're
in
the
my mouth.
most
I don't
likely
even
to
think
want
it.
that. We're the
Yeah.
most likely to say, well, let me fence up my world and protect my own. We're the most likely to say that. And they'll say, even the thought that you think that you should be able to be different makes you a threat. And the reason why is because we're happier. That's the reason why. Like I said from the beginning, I don't understand how people could lean into misery. Why would you choose that?
I think because they believe that they mistake misery for purpose. And people need
Okay.
purpose.
Yes. 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 It's the same reason why they hate work.
Why?
So, because work is purpose.
Um,
So, I mean, and it depends on what your work is, but no matter what your job is, if it's contributing to society and making something a little bit better, right? So people will say, well, there are people who have to be janitors. Okay, but could you imagine how filthy a school would be if there weren't janitors?
yeah.
Everybody contributes what they can. So,
Yeah,
um,
my German teacher, he was awesome. He said, "Oh, because I was a janitor in high school,
yeah,
and he said, all work is, we're taught in Germany that all work is worthwhile. Arbeit macht frei."
love it.
I mean, that was the Nazi thing, but they still had that value there, even
Yeah,
though Hitler totally twisted it, right?
yeah.
They still had that value that work is valuable in at every level that you have. So
Productivity is good. And when people will say, we do this for the workers, it makes me laugh because at the same time our young people are being told that working for the man, and I've heard this at the family dinner table, right? Working for the man is oppressive. And you're like, so what about the whole all workers unite? Like, how do you have both? But they don't understand that. So again, I want to go through these one more time, and I know it is exactly 10. So if you have to go, that's fine. But I do want to get all of these 10 in. Never forget that the clergy is the most powerful enemy of the communist state. Try to win your friends over to communism, and remember that Stalin, who was given a new constitution to the Russian people, is the leader of the anti-God army, not only the USSR, but throughout the world. Convince your friends not to have any contact, to go no contact with people who don't. In this case, it said priests. Watch out for spies and report saboteurs to the police. Report on your neighbors. Make sure that atheist publications are distributed among the largest possible number of people, including children. A good young communist must be a militant atheist. He must know how to use his weapons and be experienced in the art of war. Wherever you can, you must fight religious elements and prevent whatever influence they might have on your comrades. That is repressive tolerance. A true godless must also be a good police agent. It is the duty of all atheists to guard the security of the state. Again, the state is their God.
yeah.
Support the godless movement with your money, which is especially necessary for our propaganda abroad, where funds under present circumstances can only be spent secretly. And if you are not a convinced atheist, you cannot be a good communist or a real Soviet citizen. Atheism is dissolubly bound to communism. These two ideals are the pillars of Soviet power.
And
Do you
I
get
just have,
that? Like,
yes,
go ahead.
but
Tell me.
I
Yes.
saw it when I was in Russia, and the churches were beautiful and absolutely empty, except for a couple little grandmas who were there. They wiped it out.
Yep. And what are they doing here? They're turning churches into yoga studios. This is just contemporary, but it's the same thing. Um, I mean, armed queers Salt Lake met in a church. They it is the same thing. So I just want to go really quickly and see if we have any comments in our chat. Do we have anything? Not that I can see there, but last time I missed a whole bunch, so I just want to make sure that I'm not missing any in our here either. I just got same in the UK. Yes. The UK is a very good way to understand what's going on in America. It is or Canada. Canada has a really great Canadian Culture Wars. It's a YouTube channel, and it is excellent because it regularly talks about what is going on, so then you're not shocked when it comes here. And really, I hope that in following along with us and joining in, I hope what you're seeing is that this is old. This is almost 100 years of an infiltration. And the very best thing that we can do is be equipped, see it coming, and not stop speaking. I think that's the most important thing that we can do. You guys, today I am busy. So I want to get off as quickly as possible. Thank you for those of you who watched with us. Please leave your comments. Please, if you see this later, leave your comments. It really helps the algorithm. Share it with others. And we will be back next week to continue right where we left off. So, Brooke, thank you so much for joining me. We'll have more people next week. Some people are just on vacation. So,
yeah. Thanks, Carrie.
love you, lady. Bye,
Love
guys.
you. Bye.
Thank you.